think we hit $50,000 in under an hour or something like that. Like, it was really fast. And so it was really flying way faster than we thought, which is really cool to see, kind of that validation that, hey, everything looked like it was going to go well, and it's following through. People really are following up with this.
Welcome to Masters of Crowdfunding. Mark Pacoda here, and in this episode we have Zach Huber. Now, Zach Huber is one of 4 creators of a product called BocceRoll. And what is BocceRoll? Well, it's essentially taking the classic game of Skee-Ball and turning it into the backyard equivalent. And this was received extremely well. Launching on Kickstarter this year, they raised over $150,000. And so in this episode of Masters of Crowdfunding, Zach tells all. He talks about how they did it. He talks about how it actually started from a 48-hour competition where they had to come up with the game right there, and they ended up winning it. And he also talks about how he's making BocceRoll happen while still having a full-time job. So in this episode, there's a lot to learn, a lot to take away, and I hope you enjoy. All right, let's dive in. All right, Zach, well, welcome to the podcast. We're very excited to have you here. So first question is, let's dive right on into it. I would love to know, how did you come up with the idea behind BocceRoll?
Thanks, Mark. I'm excited to be here, and thanks for having me. BocceRoll is a ton of fun. We created it, so there's 4 of us, myself, Zach, Nikki, Ben, and Claude, have been working on this for a couple years together. We started this actually at a 48-hour hackathon called Make 48. They do competitions kind of around the country. You have 2 days to create a product or a solution to a problem. You actually don't get to know what the actual problem is until you show up the first day that it starts. So we went in knowing that it was something about outdoor play. That was all they had told us when we started. And when we got there, the challenge was to make a yard game. So we had 48 hours to make a yard game, and then we had 10 minutes to pitch it to a panel of judges. So through that 48 hours, we came up with BocceRoll. We created 2 other game concepts as well that we tried. One of them we immediately threw away. It was too hard and wasn't fun. The other one we played and debated for a little while, but ultimately settled on BocceRoll and made a pretty cool demonstration of it that day. And we ended up winning the competition in Madison. We went on to a national competition that year.
Wow, that's crazy. So who was actually the person on the team that came up with BocceRoll, or how was that even like conceptualized? Like, I understand it happened during this competition, but like, how did you even arrive at that idea?
Yeah, I remember there being this distinct moment after they said the challenge is to make a yard game. You have 48 hours, go, that we all just stared at each other. It was like 15 seconds of, I can't even think of a yard game that I can name right now. Just blank ideas. And so I remember we spent the next 30 minutes kind of individually drawing out ideas and sketching things and coming up with as many different ideas as we could. And as we went back and looked through them, I remember there being versions of this concept across all 4 of our pages. And that's kind of what brought it all together. Now, there's someone, so the game is it rolls up into a roll, but it unrolls into a ramp. And you throw balls and roll balls down the ramp, over the ramp, and into targets. There was some version of a ramp or throwing into targets on everyone's papers. And so we kind of took that and ran with it. So it's kind of a joint effort, which is not a great answer, but we kind of all came up with pieces of it that ended up working out pretty well.
I think it's a pretty good answer. It was meant to be. So who are the other 3 co-founders? How do you all know each other?
Yeah, so we actually all work together at Trek Bicycle. We're here in the Madison, Wisconsin area. I'm the UX research lead, so user experience research lead. Nikki Hagman is the design lead on the road bike team. Claude Dreyfel is the engineering manager on our wheels and accessories team. And Ben Fisher is the engineering manager on our city bike team. So we have a really good combination of kind of research, design, and engineering that I think served us well in the competition and has continued to serve us well as we have continued to work on this over the last couple of years.
So is this it's called Trek Bicycle?
Yes.
Is that what it's called? Yeah. So you all are still working at Trek Bicycle in addition to BocceRoll?
Yeah. So we all still work there. It's kind of a lot right now, doing both, because as we are going from the competition was obviously 2 pretty intense days, and then there was a period of time where we were deciding what we wanted to do moving forward, if we were going to move forward with it or just have it be a fun competition and end there. But we decided that we were going to move forward with it, and so it's, we all have full-time jobs, we all work together, and then obviously time is spent on BocceRoll outside of working hours. If anyone hears this from Trek, this is my lunch. It's my lunch break today. So, but we meet on that. We meet in the evenings, either just all virtually or every once in a while we get together in person. But yeah, we're all working full time in addition to doing BocceRoll.
Man, that's got to be tough. I mean, we have a lot of clients and creators that we work with that are in the same position though. So I definitely see that story happening a lot. I'm curious, how did you actually make the decision though, after winning the competition, that you were going to move forward with BocceRoll?
Yeah, that probably took us 4 months to come to that decision. I know we all had to obviously think about it individually because there's going to be a time and monetary commitment to moving forward with it. But I think at least for me and from when I've talked to everyone else, it was kind of this, every time we've shown, or during that period that we showed anyone the prototype that we created in the video of us playing it, the reaction was always the same. And it was always, I would love that. When can I buy it? And so when you start to hear that from all kinds of people, whether it's, it's one thing if it's coming from family, because you never know if they actually mean it or if they're just being nice. But when you're hearing it from strangers, like at the competition, we printed posters from the UPS store, and everyone working at the store was asking when they could buy it. And when you start hearing it from strangers, and we had a prototype that we built during the competition, and then we actually built a higher fidelity prototype after the competition that we could take to parks or the beach and play in different places. And almost every time we take it somewhere, you'd have strangers coming up and asking about it and asking if they could play and where they could buy it. And so that's a pretty good indication when you have all kinds of different people in all different locations coming up and asking you about it, that this is something more than just a cool thing we made in 48 hours. And so that was kind of the moment where like, all right, we're all in, we're going to do this.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And, you need to get past just the family and friends telling you that the product is great to get a little bit of validation. So yeah, I think maybe the scale, once you get the UPS workers telling you that they're going to buy it, that's a pretty good sign as well.
Yeah.
They have they don't have the blood relation or the relationship that would make them really feel that they need to validate your product.
Yeah, they have no reason to tell us.
Right, exactly. I'm curious if you don't mind sharing, or share as much as you feel comfortable with, but how much did y'all like put into this, even to like, did you have a conversation together that said, okay, we're going to invest this much each because there's 4 partners? Was it something that you invested in equally, or said that we're going to invest a certain amount to try to launch this? Like, how did you all come to an agreement in terms of the finances when it came to launching this product?
Yeah, it was definitely a discussion up front. And I think one thing that helped with that discussion is all of us knew, we all knew that we didn't actually know how much money it would take to get us all the way over the finish line. But we also knew that likely the amount of money needed to manufacture it was going to be more than we were willing to put in. So we're going to have to do something like Kickstarter. I'll talk about that in a minute, obviously. But we decided that we were each going to put $3,000 in up front, and that would get us through at least a couple rounds of prototyping. And the big unknown for us at that point was manufacturing. It's hard to know where to start with something like that. And so our thought was, for all of us, like that's a good chunk of money, but it's also something that if we find out that, hey, we're actually not going to be able to move forward with this, like we could all live with that. And so that's kind of where we started. And since then we've put in a little bit more, but with a successful Kickstarter, we knew we were going to be putting in more to get through that process. I think we're all together in at 25,000 with maybe a little bit more than that. So we still feel like we got out pretty well and pretty low cost on that. So we were able to do a lot of work ourselves and had a lot of friends who were able to help with some of the photo and video stuff that we don't have experience with for cheaper than we would have otherwise gotten that, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, there are so many ways to be resourceful in terms of bringing the product to life. And I mean, I think it's great. You guys committed, it sounds like $12,000 initially to get the prototyping done, which is like, it's a decent chunk of change, but it's not, for most people, they can probably find that money or if they have a little bit of savings, be able to commit that to a project, especially to see if like there is something there. And so I'm curious, in talking about Kickstarter and crowdfunding in general, was that always on your, like your roadmap, or like when did you decide that crowdfunding or Kickstarter specifically was going to be the method in which you launched the product, and why?
Yeah, so we met and got connected with our supplier pretty early on in the process. Actually, that came through a connection that Nikki had. She is a member, and I think she's on the board now, of the IDSA Midwest chapter, the Industrial Design Society of America. And she was at a meeting, and someone asked her about our hackathon event and her experience there. And as she was explaining it and explaining kind of our product, someone sent her an email and said, "Hey, I know someone you should talk to. He's a supplier who would be great for this." And so we got connected with Line Modern. Their headquarters is in Brooklyn, New York. They have people in Minneapolis, and they have a factory over in China. And so they're actually manufacturing for us. And having that relationship early on really helped us out. That was kind of the big unknown for us, is how much is this going to cost to get this to market? And so having that conversation with them of, hey, when we start to make these things, and getting through rounds of prototyping with them and better understanding what a full manufacturing run of these would look like. And, it ends up that we would need to do some kind of crowdfunding or take outside investment in order to get there. Just with, minimum orders and all of that, we just couldn't. It was significantly more money than we were willing to put in. And so we kind of, our two options at that point were crowdfunding or finding investors. And we were early enough in our project that we didn't have a whole lot of equity that we can go say, hey, we'll give you 10% if you pay for this first round of funding. And we didn't want to give up that much. We feel, and we still do feel, that this is a really good opportunity. It has a chance to get pretty big. And so we wanted to keep as much of that as we could. And we decided that crowdfunding was the way we were going to go about it. I remember we kind of decided we were going to do Kickstarter, and then we all kind of looked at each other and like, okay, so how do we do that? And Ben actually had an experience doing Kickstarter a couple years ago with something completely different. And it just wasn't a great experience for him. They tried to do everything by themselves. So we started seeking out, like, knowing their companies like LaunchBoom and others that provides similar-ish services to LaunchBoom that, exist out there to help people like us. And we met with you, and I think we met with one or two other companies that provide those services, and felt really confident with the LaunchBoom approach, and kind of that, this is the help that was provided is the help that we needed. And so just that, the whole process there felt really good. And I remember there being probably longer, I can't remember who we were talking to from LaunchBoom up front, but longer than they wanted, it took us to decide to move forward. But the conversation was kind of around, is it going to be worth the money? Like, we have no idea what's going to happen. And so at this point, we didn't know how Kickstarter was going to go, but we also didn't know how it was going to go on our own. And ultimately, we decided that it was worth the money and the time. And I remember talking and saying, if this works out, this amount of money will be relatively insignificant. If it doesn't work out, we're going to look back and wonder, would it have worked out had we done this? And so I think that was kind of the point of, okay, we're moving forward with Kickstarter, and this is how we're going to do it. And from there on, it was a lot of work, but they went pretty well. So we had a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of, I guess the results, in the first day you did, I believe it was $84,000 or somewhere around there. What was that like for you? I'm curious, like, even just seeing the sales come in, was it meeting your expectations, exceeding, or below? Just take us back to that moment.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. It very much exceeded our expectations for the first day for sure. I remember that first day going in, I had said something to Claude, Ben, and Nikki, like, hey, that day that we go live, I'm going to be distracted at work, and I know I'm going to be distracted at work. Like, that's just how it's going to be. And then it turns out that I had a team offsite doing an innovation brainstorm all day that day. And so I specifically did not bring my computer so I wouldn't be distracted looking at it. So I was distracted on my phone instead. But I remember that morning being really nervous. Like, we had really good metrics on our ads and our VIP list and stuff that I'll get into in a little bit, but we had really good indicators that things were going to go pretty well. But until it actually happens, you just don't know. Like, you just have no idea what's going to happen. And so I remember checking, I think it was 13. So our goal was $10,000 was our target on Kickstarter. And I remember checking, and we hit $10,000 in like 13 minutes. And so that was kind of the moment. It's like, okay, we're okay. We're good. Like, we got this. And it was like, okay, now I can focus on this, like my other job now. But I still was checking it. And I think we hit $50,000 in under an hour or something like that. Like, it was really fast. And so it was really flying way faster than we thought, which is really cool to see, kind of that validation that, hey, everything looked like it was going to go well, and it's following through. People really are following up with this.
Yeah, it's not just your parents and the UPS at this point.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And what was your like minimum goal? Like, is 10,000 actually what you like needed, or was there like a minimum amount of revenue collected that you like really were looking to get in order to move forward with the project?
Yeah. So we set our goal at 10,000, knowing we would meet that pretty early, but we needed between $40,000 and $50,000 for our minimum order. So that was kind of our threshold of, okay, we actually need this much money. And to see us hit that really quickly as well was pretty cool. And from then it kind of switched to, there was like this switch of, okay, we're getting ready for this Kickstarter. Okay, the Kickstarter launched. Okay, we've already hit our minimum order quantity. What do we need to do next to make sure that we're, meeting our deadlines and timelines and all of that for delivering? Because now it's real. It's like, it's a real thing now, and you'll be able to buy this and people are going to have it. And it kind of felt like at some point, and I know this is not true, but before, when we were getting ready for the Kickstarter, it's like, okay, once we hit the Kickstarter, it's going to things are going to slow down. And that's like the opposite. It's like, okay, now it's real. Now things are picking up.
It's like, all right, now we need to build this thing and actually ship it out to people. It's in some ways like the real work begins. In some respects. So I do want to talk a little bit more about the like even where you guys are at now in terms of producing the product and fulfilling. But before that, I want to go back to how did you raise $84,000 in one day?
Yeah, so we in working with Launch Boom, we went through kind of that whole process where, and this is stuff that we had no idea how to do. So it was incredibly helpful to have the knowledge and team behind it. But it was, we're creating ads on Facebook. We're basically running ads on Facebook, and we're A/B testing different headlines and different images and different text to understand what works best. And we're testing different audiences. And so we're really clearly able to see kind of who and what group of people this is resonating with and what kind of images are resonating. I think that was really cool for us to see that process. We felt pretty lucky in that all of our test ads did pretty well, but we had a couple that performed really, really well. So we kind of targeted at those groups. And just from a marketing standpoint, those images ended up being like, obviously the product was in them, but it was the large groups of people playing and having fun together. Those were kinds of the things that stuck out to people. And, it kind of goes back to us as we created a yard game. One of the things that we didn't set out to create a yard game. We set out to create something that people can enjoy and spend time together. And I think a lot of this is done during COVID. So I think that was a big push for us too. Like, we've not been able to be with people for a year. So how can we do something that's fun? And the pictures of those moments really resonated with people, which is really cool to see. So we went through that ad process beforehand, and what we were doing with that ad process is building up a VIP list. So people who have seen this and are saying, yes, I'm interested in that. I know it's coming on Kickstarter. This is the day it's coming on Kickstarter, and are willing to put $1 down to reserve their spot to purchase one. So we grew a pretty big list of VIPs. I think we were just under 2,000 VIPs, 1,500 VIPs by the time that our Kickstarter launched. And then we had an email list of about 12,000 people who hadn't reserved one, but were on the email list to follow up. I think in total, we sold 1,400 or 1,500 for Kickstarter. The majority of those were actually on day one to VIPs. I think roughly 2/3 of our VIPs ended up purchasing one on day one, which is really awesome. And so just building that VIP database of people who are excited about this before you launch was really important to getting that boost on day one that we got. And then following up kind of on, with emails of, hey, here's some new images, here's something to keep you excited, and kind of at a regular cadence, but not too much where you're overwhelming them. There's a balancing act there for sure. But that kind of tracking and data on the advertising side was really helpful in growing that. That I think was the one thing that without working with Launchboom, we would have had no idea how to even go about that. We probably would have ended up running Facebook ads, but it would have been hey, our campaign is launched, please come back us. And I don't think that would have worked out as well. So I think that was the big thing for us, was that, understanding who our target is and who's going to be buying this.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of my favorite parts about ads. I mean, I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to numbers in general, and it's like this experiment that you're putting all these different basically hypotheses out there into the world. Like, these are the ways, like these are the headlines, this is the copy, this is the creative and imagery I'm using, and let's actually track to see what is actually resonating with the audience. And we have these numbers to back it up. And yeah, it's exciting. It's fun. It's kind of like, it's kind of like a game.
Fun to watch. And one of the challenges for us is all of our ads did pretty well, which is a good thing. Like, that's helpful. But at the same time, it's like, well, should we turn this one off? It's doing well, but not quite as well. And so we kind of had to make some of those decisions. But
I think that's a good sign that you made a really great product that's solving a need for a large amount of people. When that happens, that's always a good thing. So we talk a lot about, what went well. The pre-launch went well, which led to a big day one and set you up for a lot of success, continued success in the campaign. Was there anything that did not go well during the campaign when it came to marketing, or anything that, you would do differently if you were to redo the campaign?
Yeah, overall, we're really happy with how things went. I think the one thing was after like day 3, things dropped off pretty significantly. And we had conversations about engaging with other companies to help market it during the campaign. But ultimately decided against it. We weren't sure, it's again, another unknown, like how much money are we going to spend and how much are we going to get back? And then the other side of it was we were just unsure about the total number of orders that we would get the first time around. And at some point, like, having a huge number of orders is awesome, but it's also a little bit scary the first time. And so we did not end up going forward with any advertising. It ended up with like 1,400 or 1,500 reservations. And, looking back on how things have gone, and obviously I know that the manufacturing process is going pretty well, and we're 2 or 3 weeks behind, but I think we're pretty much in the clear from here. But knowing how things are going now, I would say maybe we could push a little harder. But at that point, us not knowing, I think that was one of the reasons why we kind of held back a little bit.
I think that's really smart, honestly. I mean, just to elaborate on that for the listeners, like, there are, let's call it like live advertising agencies. So companies that will come in and are really, really good at taking projects, especially that projects that are funded and have like a big day one, and then continuing to drive traffic, mostly with Facebook ads. And one of the biggest players in the space is GelUp, who we highly recommend. And so they can many times take campaigns from big day ones to raising a lot more, double, tripling what they raise in the first day, at times more. But there are risks of doing that. And listeners might be thinking, well, what do you mean? I mean, why not just raise more money? But from what I'm hearing you say, Zach, is like, this is your first time going about this, and first time ordering product for a new product. And if the order gets really, really big, it was already quite large, over 1,000 units, there is risk associated with that as well, the more you raise, which could put you into a pretty precarious situation, potentially. I mean, luckily it sounds like that's not happening for you, but I think the way that you thought about assessing the risk is actually a smart way of thinking about it. And I think more creators should actually think that way, especially if it's their first time.
And I honestly think part of that is we have a benefit of all working at Trek in a big product development company. So we make bikes and accessories for bikes and all that. And having seen that process, we know that it's not always as clean and easy as it sounds like. And so I think that this being all on us in our first time, like you said, I think that we just wanted to just play it a little bit more safe. We were able to purchase an additional quite a few units. I don't know exactly how many, but when our shipment comes, we'll obviously ship them all out to our backers, and then we'll actually have additional ones that we can sell through our website following on at that.
And when are you planning to fulfill the orders?
Yeah, so our original goal was to have them fulfilled by November. It looks like it's pushing 2 to 3 weeks right now. There was actually a quality issue. So right now it's a mat that rolls out into a ramp. There was a backing on the mat, and something with the adhesive being used wasn't working correctly, and some of them were wrinkling and peeling off. And so that has been corrected, but it did delay us a little bit. So we're still shooting for December. Our target is now before Christmas time. So mid-December is our goal, and I think as of now, we're on track for that. We feel pretty good about that. Obviously, we wanted to hit our original target, but we know we've all backed stuff on Kickstarter and stuff like this happens. And so we've done our best to be transparent with people and upfront. If on our Kickstarter page still, we're updating. And when we found that out, there's a new post updating people on that. And it seems like people understand, they know that this isn't something you're ordering from an Amazon warehouse where there's 15,000 of them just sitting there, and the delay is because they couldn't get it to you. We're trying to make sure that it's the highest quality and getting it out there. So
I think it's well worth it for for building a long-term brand. And we tell creators this all the time, is that as long as you are honest and communicative with the backers, delays, even if they are, let's say, a few months, they will be understanding in the short term, as long as you are communicative with them. So I think the way that you're going about it is awesome. So let's say, okay, now you get inventory, you've shipped to the backers. What's next for BocceRoll in terms of continuing to sell? Are you going to e-commerce, Amazon, retail?
Yeah, so
that?
We are currently, it's going to be e-commerce. We have our website is playbocceroll.com. You can buy it straight from there. It actually is fulfilled through Shopify. So we're working with them to fulfill everything. Our goal is actually to get to a retailer next year or the year after that. Our supplier is actually helping us with that process right now. They're in conversations with 2 different retailers. I can't share who they are right now. But that process is in the works, and that's kind of our goal, is to get into retail. Obviously, that's everyone's goal, because then you sell more of them. But I think that having this in a store and to be able to see it's going to look really good on the shelves. Nikki did a great job with our design and our branding. Even the packaging looks really good. So I think it just is something that would sell quickly on a shelf if you can see it in person. And so I think that's kind of our goal. And obviously our goal is to get as many out there. Not only because we would like sell a lot of them, but I think that we think this is a great way to connect with people, and that the more people that do that, we think it's the better off it'll be.
Do you think that eventually like retail would actually be the primary sales channel over, say, e-commerce?
Yeah, that's our goal. Our goal is to have this be a retail thing where you could buy it online if you wanted to, but the main source is through retail. We're all for at a place right now where we like our jobs, our full-time jobs at Trek, and none of us want to leave. And I think if anything other than retail was our main source and we were selling a lot of these, that would get challenging. And so I think that that's kind of our hope, is that works out. But there's a couple things that are in the works, but obviously with retail, you just don't know. Like, we wish we had more information, but it's just not, until it happens, we aren't sure. So
got it. And yeah, I mean, is there a point where you all would quit your job? Like if BocceRoll was like scaling past a certain point, or how are you thinking about that? In terms of juggling the success of BocceRoll and in your current job?
Yeah, that, as of now, that's not something that has really come up. I guess it's come up kind of indirectly in the way that we are setting up our distribution and our sales. Shopify makes it pretty easy. It's not, I don't think it's the cheapest, but it's definitely really easy to work with their distribution centers. So we send our container to a Shopify warehouse, they warehouse it, and then when orders come, they ship it, and we pay for it, but they kind of handle that. And so our hope is that even as that scales, that we're able to manage it through kind of leveraging that kind of a service. And I think, like, as far as we've gotten, that's kind of the plan, just to continue to do it as we move forward.
So you're almost like optimizing more for how do you set the business up so that you can continue doing what you love in your job because you really enjoy it, but make BocceRoll almost as like hands off as possible.
Yeah, so we're trying to optimize that for sure. Just because, like I said, like, and you noted, like, we all like what we do and we're having fun doing it, and so it's definitely a challenge for sure, and something that we are thinking about. But we don't have if we hit X revenue, two of us are gonna go do this full time. I don't think that's part of the plan. I haven't talked to them about this, so I don't know, but we would probably talk about hiring someone before any of us did that.
No, I think that's really cool. I think a lot of people I talk to don't have that mindset. It's like, how can I start this, launch this product and build this business so I can get out of my 9-to-5? And that's not the way you're looking at it, which, again, there's nothing wrong with that. I actually think that's really cool to have a different way of optimizing the business so that you could do both. And I think that will actually force you to make some decisions that will actually just make the business better, probably, if you're optimizing for essentially being as hands-off as possible, like really systematizing the business. So I'm excited to see how you continue to scale this.
Yeah, thanks. And I know that also we're lucky in that we get to work in a place like Trek that we do like to work. I know it's not the case for everyone. And I know if we didn't enjoy what we did, then we would be looking for how can we make this our full-time job. Like, that's part of it too. I know we're all fortunate in that way. So
you still talk about the growth of BocceRoll though. Do you have plans to add more products within the brand over time, or what is your strategy in terms of growth?
Yeah, so we have talked about that. We don't have anything concrete in the works yet, but we actually, our company name that's registered here in Wisconsin is called Well Played. So BocceRoll is a product under Well Played, so we left it open enough that we could create additional games in this area, and I think that's something we would all like to do, and actually something that Line Modern, our supplier, approached us about. They're excited about this as well and think that it has a chance to go pretty big, and they've wanted to know, like, hey, if you guys have other games, other ideas, we want to continue this relationship and keep working with you. So they've approached us about that as well. I think that is something that just with everything going on with the Kickstarter and then getting manufacturing going and getting our first order ready, that's been like 100% of our focus right now. I'm sure once we have that first order in and we're selling them and we can place, so the way we did it, we ordered enough extra so that when we sell those, we can place another order to get, because there's like a minimum quantity and kind of scale it from there. Once that starts happening, I think we'll have a little bit of time freed up to start thinking about what's next. I would guess that each of us has a few ideas, but we haven't sat down and had okay, what's the next product? But it'll come, I'm sure.
I'm sure. It's not the top priority right now. It's not a 10 out of 10 in terms of urgency. Definitely not with everything else that you got going on. Okay, so last question for you. I also talk to a lot of creators that I would say creators or creators in progress, let's call them. Maybe they have a product that they developed, they have like a prototype for it, but they're just a little bit stuck in terms of knowing what should they do next to really bring this product to life, or maybe they might have a little bit of fear or something that's stopping them from moving forward, potentially because of failure. So there's a lot of context to this question, but what advice, if anything, would you give to, that creator that's kind of sitting on the sideline with this idea, but they might just feel a little bit stuck in terms of what to do next?
Yeah, I think, there's a couple things, and one of them is kind of biased by my user experience research background, but try and get it out in front of as many people as you can. And I would also say know that if you get negative feedback from it, it's just on the product and something you could change. Like, don't take it personally. That's actually helping you because you didn't keep moving forward with it. So I think understanding how many people and how many different people you can get it in front of that have no connection to you. And if you start to hear, hey, I would change this pretty consistently, then look at doing that and listen to what they're saying. And then once you start to, once you've kind of found that thing that resonates pretty well with people, Kickstarter and working with Launchboom really are great ways to go about it. It's a challenging thing to do on your own. I think that's one thing that I learned. I don't know that we would have been successful without working with Launchboom. I think that, and he didn't tell me to say this, but I think that they really did help us a lot in getting to where we are. And I think that there's this fear of, well, I could have saved that money and done it on my own, but there's also a risk of it not working out. And like, then you're stuck where you are now with whatever you've put into it. And so I think it's that there's kind of that step of talking to enough people to where you're comfortable that this is an idea that you can move forward with. And once you're comfortable with that, do it. There's a risk in waiting. Someone else can do it. Someone else can do it faster, that kind of thing. So I think that, that'd be kind of my advice, is just to truly understand that this is something people want and need and know why you're making it, and then move forward from there.
I think it's great advice. Awesome. Well, Zach, I think that will do it for this podcast. I really, really appreciate you coming on and sharing your whole experience with our audience. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark.